Hello? Hello. Hey there. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Really excited to be back and streaming. Had a good break, but definitely excited to be here streaming again. It's been a bit. I think about 3 weeks now. I'm not going to look it up, but it's been about 3 weeks or so. Actually, maybe 4? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but today we're going to talk a little bit about why I've been gone, and kind of talk about similar experiences I've had to what I did. Um, as you can tell from the title, which I've already forgotten what I called it, music conferences. Is the audio 39? Is this working? Hold on. Is this working? Hold on. Okay. Yeah, it seems like it's working. Sorry. But yeah, so we're going to talk about music conferences. The focus will be on the most recent music conference I attended, which was ITech, the International Tuba Euphonium Conference. It was really exciting. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a really really great conference. My first time at iTech, so I was really excited to finally be there. Uh, but yeah, where to begin? There's honestly a lot to talk about, but let's do it. So, first of all, if you're not familiar with conferences, I mean, I assume most people know what conferences, conventions are. It's basically you have this whole, like, it's a gathering of people who do that thing. So, like, in my case, it's like music related thing. So, for the International Tuba Euphonium Conference, it's a gathering of people who play tuba euphonium, teach tuba euphonium, uh, compose for tuba euphonium, and sell stuff for tuba euphonium people. um, so, which is honestly kind of a niche crowd when you think about it, but I mean, the thing about the world, we have like 7 billion people, even though it's a niche, it still means there's several hundred, maybe even close to 1,000 people who are interested in that thing. Um, so yeah, it was really cool. I'm working on a vlog. I honestly haven't made too much progress, but soon I'll be posting a vlog because I recorded some segments from there. Mostly just little tidbits here and there. I didn't want to like record everything. Oh, sorry, I just realized something. That's not important, but sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. But anyways, tuba conference, lots of tuba and euphonium related people there. Really cool. It's if you haven't been to any sort of a conference before, I would recommend looking into it. I mean, there's conferences for basically anything. So if you're into a hobby, chances are there's a conference for that. And you should probably go look that up, whatever that is. Be it railroad or train collecting, or just you like to play with like train sets or whatever. Um, there's definitely toy conventions. Uh, there's TwitchCon, of course. VidCon, I think, is another one that's video specific. But they're really great just for getting out there and meeting people who are doing the same thing you're doing, and seeing how you can do that thing in different ways. Um, I know some highlights, and I wish I had more pictures downloaded to my computer because I took a good amount of pictures. I know a couple of highlights for me from the conference. Um, One of them was just an example of seeing how other ways to do it is a tuba. I heard a tuba player named Sean Kennedy play, um, and he plays in drag. So he's like dressed up in um, like a dress and stuff. And I forget his exact name. I remember I heard of Sean Kennedy last year, um, at the International Women's Brass Conference. I think he played on like one piece that year, as part of another tubist recital, Dan Burdick. Um, and I think his drag name was like Peacock Queen, Goddess of the Tuba, or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head, but uh, he's outstanding. He's so good at tuba, and it was really cool to hear him live and play that. And I'll definitely have a snippet or two from that because that performance is really cool. Another one was Richard Antoine White. He gave a lecture or masterclass lecture. He just talked about kind of his thoughts. He's apparently making a third book, which if you've even heard of Richard White, actually I think I talked about him once on stream, once or twice. And I read some of his book during Black History Month this year. He has a book called I'm Possible. What's the full title of that? Hold on. Yeah. I'm Possible, a story of survival, a tuba and the small miracle of a big dream. This looks like that. It's a really cool book. Oops. I'll put it down. No space for stuff. Really need to spend some time organizing, but it's fine. But he's such a cool guy, and everything he says is incredible. Let me pick out some highlights from, because I took some notes from that lecture, because I was partially because he said to take notes, but I was going to. Actually, no, I wasn't going to before he said that. Uh, but I was fine with taking notes because he is honestly, all of his words are just incredible. Yeah, but if you haven't checked out that book, you should. And he said most of his lecture he talked about his third book coming up sometime soon. And it sounded pretty awesome, so definitely look forward to that. A couple of just notes from that I took. Everyone can be an MVP, most valuable person. Great people aren't born, they are grown. And he talked a lot about like establishing your own brand, because he himself has like this whole brand of his raw tuba, because his initials, he's Richard Antoine White, RAW, raw tuba. And he was even like wearing his own merch when he was in there. Because he was talking. There's another tuba player named Dan Parentoni, who's really famous for having I forget the type of hat, but he's really famous for wearing this one specific hat. And it's like, yeah, that's not Richard. Sorry, I'm mixing their names up. Dan Parentoni. That's Dan Parentoni's hat. So he's like, yeah, I want to establish my own brand, and that's why I walk around wearing my own merch. And he's like, yeah, I want to be the first tuba player to have a deal with a partnership with a tennis shoe manufacturer, which is pretty funny. But so he talked about that a lot, just like making sure you have establish your own brand, which is a good point, honestly. I've kind of established sort of my brand here with the Tuba label, but I still probably need to do more in fleshing it out. And something he talked about too was, what do you want your colleagues and family to say about your legacy if you were to pass right now? Which, is kind of something I've heard a lot, but I think it's something good to think about every once in a while, because I know for me at least, I get wrapped up in things, get really distracted easily. So it can be hard to find that focus. What am I doing? What am I actually doing? So I think that was a really good point. And then he had a couple of sayings that were like the 3 P's. I think there was a 7 P's or 3 C's. So he has 3 C's: chance, choice, and change. You want the chance to make a better life, which basically just means like, I don't know, you just want a chance to get better, right? And given the right choices with the chances, or make the right choices with the chances we are given. So the chances is like, it's like making it to college, or going to a convention, or just anything. Whatever we end up doing, making sure we're choosing the right things. Although sometimes it's hard to tell right from wrong. But in general, just making sure we're trying to better ourselves with what we've been given. And then the change, and then be the change that will be, we want to see the change that will be for the betterment of everyone. So, and with that, just kind of, can't remember exactly what that is, but it's just basically just like making changes that will help not only you, but others around you. And just something in general is we can't really do anything alone. Um, sorry. So just making sure you're helping those who are helping you. Yeah, because we should just be helping each other, right? We have a very sometimes toxic world, right? But that can all be changed if we all each of us try to help others around us. And hopefully that will just spread until everyone's just helping others around us. And we'll have a great society where everyone's just helping each other. Yeah, and then these two kind of connected. In spite of being sucker punched, I will figure it out. I will figure it out. And you owe it to yourself to keep swinging, right? So it's like stuff happens to everyone. Bad things. It's kind of a part of life, unfortunately, where it's sickness. Maybe it's you got fired, laid off. A job you were doing just kind of fades away. But regardless of those things, we still need to figure it out and keep going. Because otherwise, we're just kind of doing nothing. I know I'm guilty of that sometimes. It's really easy just to do nothing. All you do is just sit there. Right? And it takes more effort. But it is definitely more worthwhile to put that effort in to get that stuff going. And then he talked about, and I'm not going to go too deep into these because I'm not great at taking notes. But he talked about, this is a part of his book that's coming up. He has these 6 categories of teachers. There's the dreamer, storyteller, motivator, teacher. I think that's what it was. I think I might have written that one down, but freestyler, and I missed one. Yeah, but anyways, you just talked about there's like different types of teachers, and each one of the teachers he listed are teachers in his life that helped him get forward. For example, the motivator is kind of like the cheerleader who pushes you to keep on going, makes you kind of think about like the sorry, one of my chats is going crazy, but hear like the Rocky theme in your head. It's like, come on, do it, try it, keep trying. And then the dreamer, or I didn't write this one down very well, but he equated the dreamer to Harvey Phillips, who, if you don't know that, he's a famous tuba player. Hey, Jonathan, thanks for coming by. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I hope you're having a good week as well. And then one quote that I thought was really good is, the truth will set you free, but will piss you off. It's just, I mean, not always true, but it is pretty true for a lot of things. Right? And just to kind of bring you up to speed, Jonathan, I'm talking about one of the lectures I saw at my conference from a tuba player named Richard Antoine White. There are thousands of problems, and most would be solved by being kind, which kind of goes back to what I said earlier about we want to see the change that would be for the betterment of everyone, right? If you're all kind, we probably wouldn't have as many problems. Yo, truth pisses me off, dude. Yeah. And then he has the 7 P's. Prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance, which is a saying I've heard before. Minus the piss part. director in my undergrad, and he was also the music director in my graduate school. But he would always do a welcome back to school thing where he'd be like, the 6 P's of performance: prior, proper, planning prevents poor performance. Um, so that wasn't, but it was kind of funny to hear the piss in the middle of that. Prior, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And then another thing that he talked about, which after thinking about it and hearing him talk about it, I definitely am agreeing more with, which is to work as hard as you can. And even if you get exhausted, try to push through a little bit. Which in previous times, I kind of thought more about take your time. It's okay to get exhausted and stuff and work through it a little bit, but take time for yourself. And he did say that, like afterwards he did say, make sure you take time to restart and refocus as much as you need, which is pretty important because everyone has their own things, their own grinds, which are all important. We need to keep going and keep trying. And then he talked about the SMART goal setting system. If you're not familiar with SMART, it means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Which is just kind of thinking the specific part obviously is like a specific goal. Like if you say, I'm going to drive, that's not really specific at all, right? But if you say like, I'm going to drive to Dairy Queen, I don't know. That's pretty specific right there. That's my secret cap. Yep, exactly. And then measurable is like something you can actually measure. Like maybe you set a goal that's like, I want to be able to play a B flat scale at a 2-octave B flat scale at 140 beats per minute. That's pretty measurable. We can get our metronome and be like, okay, 140. And then once we can play a B flat scale clean at 140, it's there. Attainable, like something real that you can do. So like for if you're just starting playing an instrument, it's probably not obtainable for you to say, I'm going to play blah, blah, blah concerto in 2 weeks when you've just started playing the instrument. There are exceptions, and it depends on what concerto you're talking about, but generally that's not the most obtainable. Maybe it's something like, I'm going to learn B flat scale in 2 weeks. That's somewhat obtainable, I would say. And realistic kind of goes around the same kind of goal of, like, can you do that within a certain amount of time, which brings to timely, which is kind of timely. You set time goal. Be like, in 2 months, I want to be able to play all of the scales, or all of the major scales. That's probably more realistic, if you don't know all of them already. But if you do, and you know some other scales, then that could be obtainable to learn all the scales in 2 months. That'd be tight, but maybe it could work. I don't know. But yeah, that's SMART. And then he talked about another acronym, VSIRA, which this relates back to him talking about establishing a brand, which is vision, skill, incentive, resources, action. And basically it just means you need and he got this from I think business CEOs or something like that. And basically it's saying you want to have each of these in order to have a successful brand. So like the vision, if you don't have vision, but you have everything else, it's just confusion. What are you doing? What are you trying to go for? If you don't have skill, you're just kind of anxious all the time because you don't know what you're doing. And then incentive is more, I think this is something that I kind of struggle with personally is not having some incentive. But it's basically just this leads to no motivation or resistance. And it's like I said, this is something I'm struggling with, I think. But yeah, I can't really say much more on that. And the resources is having things to back you, like money, an instrument, if you're going to music things, whatever, for whatever thing you're going. If you're doing like typing or writing type stuff, a computer with a keyboard is probably good. And that if you don't have any resources to support everything else, you just get frustrated, is what he said. And then action plan, which is if you don't have that, then it leads to false starts, which I think is something else I kind of like a little bit, but I don't know. But this one's mainly about like planning out what you want to do in detail. Yeah, we were better collectively than individually. Yeah, and yeah, so that one was great. And then another lecture I went to was by Joanna Ross Hersey. She had a lecture on female brass players of the 19th century, which is pretty cool to hear about all the, how women, there were like not a lot, but there were like women brass players of that time that were kind of rejected, but they formed their own collectives. So there were like a lot of like female orchestras, or it was just a orchestra made of female players. And it was cool to hear about that. And then a resource she talked about was Historic Brass Today, which I think she said was new, but it's just a kind of a new magazine database for learning more about historic brass players. Sounds like you heard some interesting talks for sure. Yeah, it was very cool. And there wasn't too much. There was a couple things. Like one thing is don't judge solely based on pictures. Refer to programs and other materials in scrapbooks. Because she was like talking about how there were like tuba and euphonium brass players in these orchestras, bands, whatever. But the pictures didn't really show that. But because of programs and such, they list out the full ensemble of the ensemble, full listing. So from that, we were able to know, yeah, there were tuba players and euphonium players that were female back in the 1800s. And then a couple of older brass players. Cora Youngblood, I think is Corazon Youngblood, I think, is one of the older tuba euphonium players. I forgot. I should have written the name down. I didn't because I knew about Cora. I've heard about Cora. And then we have Edna White is a trumpet player, older trumpet player. Connie Weldon is she's a little bit newer. Because I think she died in the 2000s or maybe late 90s. But she was a tuba player from the 1900s. Yeah. Oh, and then the last two more points that I thought were pretty good out of this. Just question, call out bad behavior, and set up spaces to talk about social justice issues. Because they're getting better, I think. But there's definitely room for improvement. I think two two other lectures I took notes on. Oh yeah, another lecture I went to that was really cool was Kent Eshelman. He's a really great jazz tuba player. Yeah, I don't think he has recorded jazz tuba stuff, but I heard him last year at the South Central Regional Tuba Euphonium Conference, and he had such a pure sound, a really nice sound on tuba, and he had his finale his finale piece was I forget what it was. It might have been Summertime, but it was he played it on the tuba, and then with his left hand he played like a bass line on the piano, and that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Um so I was like, I saw him on the lecture doing a jazz program where he talked about Brad Felt, I think was the euphonium's name. Yeah, I think it was Brad Felt. Was a jazz euphonium player who passed away in the 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. There was quite a few albums. And he like had some transcriptions from some of his songs he's recorded, and that was really cool. And I think the note I took was just a reminder for myself just to work on practicing. That's why that I was able to play piano with the other hand. Yeah. Yeah, it was intense. I was like, okay, he's good. He can play piano and tuba. Yeah. But it was oh yeah, my reminder was just 15 minutes a day playing chords on piano, cuz he had like a good couple of exercises to help like learn jazz and stuff. And so that was just a reminder for myself to do that. So I'll probably start. I kind of forgot about that until right now. So I'll probably try to start that in the next couple days, or maybe in a week or two. Because something else I will say, even though I'm back streaming, I have to take a break next week because I'll be at a festival all next week. So we should have a more normal schedule of doing it weekly in 2 weeks. Yeah. Clearly an effective note. Yeah. I'm not going to say too much more about that, but oh, and then a note from another lecture I went to by Gretchen Renshaw James. I do know how to pronounce her name because during my master's, she's a professor at this neighboring school. Yeah, no, that's good. So she's a really cool person. If you ever get a chance to hear her play, or do a lecture somewhere, definitely recommend it. She's really cool. Unfortunately, she's not really, I think she does teach tuba euphonium a little bit at her school, but she also does band and a lot of other classes. Like she teaches as the band director there. And I think the tuition there is pretty high. So unless you're from Arkansas, yeah, at this point at least, I don't know, but I would say talk to her first. If you hear and you're like, okay, I like her sounds, and thoughts. But yeah, she's awesome. But my note I took from her lecture, she did a performance and a lecture 2 separate times. But the performance is awesome. She's such a good player, and it's really cool. She's also going into like tuba with looper pedal, which is really cool to play. She played this piece called Viral Boulevard by Critchlow. I forget Critchlow's first name, but that piece is on my wish list for sure. But one of her notes from her lecture, Renshaw's lecture, was that rehearsals can serve to teach students how to practice, which is something that I've maybe thought about, but I haven't really thought about too much. So I thought it was really cool. I thought that was a really good point. So yeah, and I think there might have been another lecture I took notes on, but it was on my iPad. Yeah, it was on my iPad, which I don't have right here, and I don't want to get up and get it. But anyways, yeah, so it was a super cool conference. Now let's talk about other conferences in comparison. Because at this point, I think I've been to about 4 different categories of conferences. I think my first conference was the GMEA, Georgia Music Educators Association in Service Conference, probably 2014, 2015, one of those 2 years, I think. Yeah, my first one, I had it at the last time, because if you go to it nowadays, it's in Athens, but the first year I went was the last year they had it down in Savannah, which is cool that they had in Savannah, but also it wasn't as close to stuff. So like you actually, to get to like food and stuff for lunch, if you didn't eat at the convention center, you would, if you didn't want to eat at the convention center, I should say, you would have to like drive across a bridge to get to downtown at Savannah, which wasn't the greatest. But yeah, for those type of conferences, I'm going to call them MEA conferences, Music Educators Association, because as far as I understand it, most states have something like this. I know Texas does, because Texas's conference is always talked about as being like one of the best MEA conferences to go to, just because Texas has a really big music program. So their MEA conference is also really big, which makes sense for Texas to have a really big music program. But I assume most states have this. I highly recommend them, especially if you're going to music education. If you're starting college as a music educator, definitely recommend trying to go out to one of these at least once or twice, if not more. I enjoyed them a lot. Just conferences in general are really great times to learn a lot of stuff about your field, or see how other people's do your thing in your field. And music educators conferences especially, it's a really great opportunity to learn more about what to do for specific things, because they have little lectures that are on specific topics. Like I said, in the couple that I talked about, there's one about 19th century women who played brass instruments. There was another about, the one that Renshaw gave was about conducting, and the other one was about a jazz euphonium player that I saw. And yeah, and then MEA conferences have a lot more focus on the lectures, as opposed to, because I feel like at the ITech, that International Tuba Euphonium Conference, has a lot more focus on performance, just because that's what we do. We play tuba and euphoniums. So they featured a lot more performances than master classes and lectures, where they just taught about stuff. Although I think there was a pretty good balance at this one. I know at the last year, 2022, I went to the South Central Regional Tuba Euphonium Conference at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And that one had only a few like lectures, whereas most of the events were just performances, which was cool. It's great to hear performances from different people, but also I feel like a good portion of those type of things should have some educational things of just like learning how to do your thing more effectively. And then of course the other thing about conventions is they usually have lots of cool stuff to buy. Like I know this one they had like 5 or 6. Let's see, they had Yamaha, Miraphone, Adams, Eastman, Wessex, and they had like 2 others. So yeah, they had about 7 instrument manufacturers that were there displaying their instruments. Then they had a couple. Then they had like 2 or 3 that were like sheet music focused. Um, and then they had a couple that were just like individual people. Like Oystein Bodsvik had a booth at this previous one, and there was a couple booths for army bands, military bands. Yeah, and there was a couple booths also that just had like mouthpieces, and stuff. So that's a lot of. I'm checking out that stuff. I know I got 2 pieces. I bought 2 pieces. One of them was this piece. You probably can't read the title because it's backwards, but Thomas Bow, Sweet Tuba. They played it because another thing about iTech is it has nightly concerts that are really cool, and that was played at one of the concerts. And I was like, that's cool. So I got it. And another one was just a 12 Duets for Tuba by Julian Torres. I hadn't really heard about this, but I was like, sure, duet books are. I don't have too many of those, so yeah. And then one night they also had these nightly hangs, where they had like these nightly jazz hangs that were like from 10 to 12 every night. We only went to 2 of them. Just because one thing about conventions is that you will not see everything. If you do, you're some magician. You have like one of those turntables, whatever, from Harry Potter, that turn back time. You have a time machine. You can't. There's no possible way to go to everything. Just because I mean, at iTech, there was about like 3 to 4 things. Actually, 2 to 4. Yeah, 2 to 4 things happening within every slot. So you have to choose. You can kind of go from place to place in within an hour sometimes, but generally, I mean, they're pretty much filling the whole hour slots. There were a couple that were half. Especially, actually, no, a lot of the performances were half hour performances. So like each hour segment was split between 2 different performers. Like I know the Sean Kennedy's performance I was talking about earlier in the stream. The first half of that was a Tuba Euphonium ensemble from Japan, I think it was, and they were really cool. And then they were the first 30 minutes. In the last 30 plus minutes, it kind of Sean Kennedy's performance went over a bit. Was Sean Kennedy. But yeah, so there's lots of things. You have to make sacrifices. Just to see things. I know, like an example for me. I think it was at the same time as Jonah Rouse Hersey's lecture. There was also a performance by Oystein Bodsvik, who, if you don't know who that is, he's one of the best tuba soloists alive right now, I think. And he's, for up until like a year or 2 ago, he was able to make his career off of just being a soloist, which is pretty impressive for a tuba player. Most tuba players have to either join a military band, orchestra, or teach at a university. And university professors, if you're a university professor of tuba and euphonium, because typically they're grouped together, it's not either or, it's both of them together. Usually, for a lot of the university professor gigs, you kind of have to have something secondary in order to have sustainable job or some sustainable income, I should say. But yeah, so was pretty impressive. But I've heard Oyston a lot, and I knew I was gonna hear Oyston at a festival. The festival I'm going to next week, actually. So I was like, I'm just gonna go to this one and learn some about the history of like some of the historic players that I might not have heard of, which I didn't hear about a lot of the players they talked about. But anyways, at one of the late night hangs, I met a composer named Gabriel Newvine, and he gave me this. He was like one night, like the last night, he was like, "I just have these extra scores. Take them, please. I don't want them or something. I don't know." But he was just handing them out, so I grabbed this one. You can't really say it, but it's just called A King, because I think the guy he wrote this for was Aaron King. And I think I'm gonna work on this and have her play this on one of the streams sometime soon, or within a month or two, and maybe we'll get the world premiere of that. That'd be cool. Because he was telling me that the guy he wrote it for hasn't even played it, and kind of didn't sound like the guy was gonna play it for a while. So, but anyways, yeah. So I got that, and then and the other thing I bought from the conference. This is the most tuba thing ever. Was a trumpet mouthpiece. It was just that they were just had one booth had like trumpet mouthpieces. They were like plastic, and I was like, might be good just to have one. Yeah, because although I honestly, as my career goes on, don't expect to teach as many trumpet students. But I know in previous years when I have taught trumpet students, I never had a mouthpiece, so it wouldn't have to be an awkward thing of me saying, "Hey, can I borrow your mouthpiece?" Like just clean out their mouthpiece and use it. Trumpet, bada bing. Yup. Yup. But it'd be an awkward thing of me asking to borrow their mouthpiece, or just not just demonstrate on my own mouthpiece. But so I was like, I'll get this. It was like $15. I was like, that's great. Most of the time when I look at trumpet mouthpieces at the store I work from, they're like closer to 60 or so, which is honestly like $60 more than I want to spend on a trumpet mouthpiece. But that's just me as a tuba player. I don't really like playing trumpet. I like hearing some trumpet players, but not so much playing it myself. I had to do that for about almost a full year over my undergrad, because I played it for half a semester in a trumpet/French horn methods class, and then I played it for a full semester in a different class that was like I think it was a conducting class, where our teacher wanted us to experience like directing a middle school ensemble. So she had all of us play on secondary instruments that we weren't good at. So I was put on trumpet, which is fair. It's one of my worst instruments. I think my worst is definitely flute. Not good at playing flute. But anyways, back to conventions. I got super derailed there. But anyways, the MEA Fest conferences, really great for music educators. But like I was saying, you kind of have to sacrifice time. These ones especially, because I feel like there's at least like 6 to 8 things happening at any given moment at the MEA festivals, at least the one in Georgia. I think there was at least, because there would be like 2 or 3 things for band, then 2 or 3 things for orchestra, then 2 or 3 things for general music, and maybe like 1 or 2 performances within an hour. All of that happening. I think it might have been closer to 2 for each. Oh, and also choral. So it was probably, so yeah, a lot of stuff happening at those, but it kind of makes it, I mean, with there being like stuff for choral, orchestra, whatever, generally when you're going through a degree, music degree, you kind of know what group you're in. Like, although I will say there's some used to going and check out like choral stuff if you're not a choral major, especially if it's really into breathing, because breathing between brass players, woodwind, wind players in general, and singers honestly isn't too different. Um, yeah. So for breathing stuff, it doesn't hurt to go and see those. But um, so there's a lot happening there. Uh, and I will say, generally, the thing about these fest conferences, like the prime days, the first couple days are always like packed. And then the last day, in my experience, like this last one, um, iTech, the last day I finished the last thing and went to the main lobby, and like every other day at the end of the day, there'd been like a good like crowd down in like the lobby of the building. But this year there was no one there. Um, but on the not this year, on the last day, at like 5 p.m. whenever everything was done, it was empty. No one was there. It was kind of wild, honestly. And I know the IWBC that I went to last year, International Women's Brass Conference. Last day was kind of like that too, where it was kind of like, where'd everyone go? Huh? Just walking around, it was like no one there. I mean, I will say there weren't too many people at that conference in general. Definitely not as many as the iTech I just went to, but there weren't a lot of people. And then also for the, I think SCURTech was kind of like that too. The last day, the South Central Regional Conference for Tuba Euphonium. And then GMEA festivals are kind of, conferences are kind of like that too. Like the last day that I think it's a Saturday it usually ends on is like, people especially won't be there at the first sessions because it's like Friday's like, yeah, that's the night. If you know what I mean. But it's, I mean, it's still good. It's just fair because it's like the last day is generally like, especially at the MEA conferences, the Georgia GMEA festival conferences I've been to. Uh, the last day is kind of a half day, so it's not even a full day. So it's kind of like if there might be one thing good, but yeah, it's yeah. But anyways, um, yeah, and those are kind of the main three. The fourth one that I've been to is the more related to my fraternity. I'm grouping into music conferences because the fraternity I joined in my undergrad is a music fraternity, band fraternity to be more specific, which kind of had the same deal. So similar deals. Just focused on how can we do things as a fraternal brother or sister for our sister organization, TBS. I'm part of Kappa Kappa Psi. But yeah, conferences are cool. I definitely recommend them. If there's a conference happening near you that's music related and you're in the music genre, definitely try to check it out. I will say sometimes these can be a lot. So if you're just starting out, it might be good just to get a day pass. If you're someone in high school or maybe even in college, but college I would say just go for the whole thing. Because if you're already studying for that thing, you might as well always try to get yourself engrossed in it. Versus if you're in high school, I mean you've got a lot of high school things to focus on. So maybe just a day just to see like, is this something that maybe I would be interested in pursuing later in life or pursuing in college or something? Yeah, and just like whatever you're into. I know I something I should probably think about within the next year or two is um going to one of these like YouTube or Twitch related streaming conferences, but I don't know. Um Although I think one that I need to think about that I hear people talk about a lot is MagFest, I think is what it's called. Um yeah, and I think I hear a lot of people talk about that one, and that's um so I might try to go to that one within the next year or two. I know next year I'll probably be going to hopefully be going to at least 3 or 4. Seems like a lot of those are dead. Seems like a lot of those are dead. MagFest is pretty safe though. Oh, you're talking about like TwitchCon and all those. Okay, yeah, fair. Yeah, yeah. I don't know, because I mean, I've been, I know I know TwitchCon had a lot of bad things happening last year. Oh, I didn't hear about that. Um, but yeah, there's, I know there's a couple of cons in the state where I am, Georgia, that I always wanted to go to. Like Dragon Con is a pretty one that happens every year. That's always talked about a lot. It's a really cool, like, just kind of nerd gamer convention. And I think another one called MomoCon is talked about a lot, but I couldn't go to the one this year just because it was literally at the same time as iTech. So it was happening, and I was like in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas. I was somewhere around there. I was traveling over to Arizona from Arkansas because I drove. Well, my friend drove, but I was riding with a friend just to save a little bit of money. And honestly, it was really cool. Just to drive through that country, um, drive through New Mexico, Arizona. A lot of really interesting sights. I know, for me as being someone from the East Coast, um, there's a lot of forests, which there are definitely some cool sights I think over here, but a lot of it kind of looks the same after a bit. Still looks cool, still looks interesting, but it's more foresty. But over in Arizona, there are forests still, surprisingly, but they're different forests. Like I know we traveled through this canyon called Salt River Canyon, and it was just one of the biggest. I mean, not the biggest, because we stopped at the Grand Canyon on the way back, and that place is massive. But the Salt River Canyon is also really cool. It was, yeah. So if you're ever in Arizona, um, definitely recommend Grand Canyon in general. I mean, I'm sure if you've heard of the Grand Canyon before, but yeah, and I think the cons with driving is that yes, it takes more time because I think it was 19 hours. It was a 19-hour trip from Arkansas to Arizona. Um, and then that doesn't include because I drove from Georgia to Arkansas, which is another 9 hours. So I only drove for 18 hours ish. Um, but our drive, but our drive from Arkansas to Arizona and back was about close to 40 hours. Um, I think maybe a little bit more because we took a little bit of time, like tiny bit of time on the way back, but not too much time. Um, just to go off our slightly out of way to go over to the Grand Canyon, and see in Sedona. If you're ever in Arizona, definitely recommend Sedona, Arizona. It is a tourist trap, a big tourist trap. Um, Sorry, dinner time. Hope you have a good rest of the stream. Thanks. Yeah, well, actually, I'm probably wrapping this up in the next 10 minutes or so. But thank you for coming by. I appreciate it. Um, Sedona, Arizona is really cool because it's like, I mean, once again, as someone from the East Coast, um, uh, I'm used to there being forests everywhere, green, just green colors everywhere. But this place, like, there's forests there. Um, yeah, glad you're here too. Have a good dinner. There are forests around Sedona, but there's also like these giant rock faces that are just red, orange, yellow. That looks so cool. So it's definitely a cool stop. But yeah, like I said, it's kind of a tourist trap. I probably got sucked in by a good couple of the stores and spent probably more than I should have. But it's all okay when you're exploring, right? um, but yeah, I think the plus to driving to things as opposed to flying to things is that if you see something cool, you can actually just stop and look at it. Um, I mean, not always. If you're on a time constraint, you kind of have to keep going. But I know all our times in driving, we weren't really too much in a hurry. Like we did want to finish the drive, but we weren't like, oh, we gotta get here by 5 p.m. So we gotta just keep trucking, and we have a stop at 3 and 10. That's it. We just kind of stopped whenever. We were like, oh, we need gas probably, or need to use the bathroom, or let's go. I'm kind of hungry. Let's go stop somewhere. Or, oh, look at that cool site. And there's a rest stop there that we can stop at to look at it. So it's, I think there's definitely some plus to driving places. It definitely is a lot. Um, but unlike flying places, you can see the places from the windows and stuff if you're on the window seat. But you can't just be like, oh, airplane pilot, please put the plane down, so I can get out and look out, check out the sights here, you know. Um, but okay, yeah. So yeah, but anyways, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Conferences are cool. If you're at all in the music field and interested in learning more, experiencing, seeing what your field has to offer, go to a conference. They're really great for networking, um, and meeting new people. Like I said, learning new things, how to do your thing more efficiently, learn different ways of you doing your thing, um, and just seeing lots of cool people who do what you're doing on a very professional level. Um, yeah, and oh, I don't want to leave on a bad note. We'll save that for another time because I think this is going to be a regular thing. Um, where I'm gonna try to stream around. It's usually probably gonna be later, like 7. Actually, probably starting more closer to right now, like 7:30 or 8. We'll do this kind of talk thing, but we'll do a talk on Wednesdays, and Thursdays will be, of course, Tuba Thursdays. And Fridays/weekend, we'll be doing some cool gaming stuff. Although I will say I know in one of my previous posts I said I was gonna do a gaming stream on Friday. I actually don't think I'll be able to. But stay tuned. Um, I'll I'll try to post an update about it tomorrow, whether or not I'm doing that. But otherwise, tune in tomorrow for Tuba Thursday. I think we're just gonna play some random etudes. I recently learned about this technique. I don't know, just this new way of practicing etudes, where you play like uh play from several different etude books, and you play from each etude for 8 minutes at a time. So tomorrow, since it's the 15th, we'll be playing etude number 15 from about 5 or 6, 7, 8 books. Probably around 6, actually. Yeah. But it's 8 minutes of practicing that, 2 minutes of break, then 8 minutes of practicing, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. Oh, yeah, and I got that from Scott Sutherland. If you don't know who that is, go and check out his YouTube channel. He has a lot of really cool he's a lot more Sowish than I am. But he has a lot of really cool multi-track recordings of movie songs from movies and stuff. And within the last 2 months, I think, he started doing a Tuba Tuesday where he just releases like a quick 2 to 5 minute video talking about one specific thing. And they're really cool. Yeah. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it as always. I hope you have a great day, great rest of your evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, if you're watching this live. If you're not, then I'll see you the next time. But bye. Have a good one. Yeah. See ya. I'm not very good at timing this.